Greetings and salutations. Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing all right. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Actually, there's not going to be a whole lot to see in this video. If you are one of those people who likes to listen to YouTube videos while they do other things, feel free to do that because you're not going to miss anything by keeping your eyes away from the screen. Right now, as a matter of fact, if you've already done that, you'll see that there is just a card up here that says Easy Linux Show 2018. And the reason why that is there is because that's the first thing I want to talk about in this video. I'm going to stop doing the Easy Linux Show. I'm kind of done with the idea. I want to kind of, I don't know, it's seeming to me to be rather pretentious. And there are some positives to doing things in a quote-unquote show format, and there are some negatives, and right now the negatives seem to be overshadowing the positives in my brain, so I'm going to stop doing this garbage. Now, let me tell you where my head was at when I started doing this at the first of this year. First off, there were a lot of people on YouTube who were doing well, I wouldn't say a lot. Let's say that let's get real about it. There's one or two people that were doing stuff in this sort of a format, and they were doing a show type setup. And I thought, ooh, that's really cool. I like that idea. And I liked it because of the fact that it eliminates some of the negativity that was coming back to me. First of all, if I do a video and the title of the video is Make Linux Run Your Toaster, and if I do a video about that and then talk about anything else in that video at all, what happens is that I get a whole bunch of negative comments, people saying I'm talking too much, I'm not sticking to the point. I mean, they're out there saying things like, I have a very short attention span. I have the attention span of a lobotomized gnat, and my OCD kicks in, and when my OCD kicks in, I can't watch it anymore, and that's your fault. So what you need to do is get the commands into the first 30 seconds of the video, and if you say anything else, you're just wasting my time, and you're a bad person. And I really need to make sure I know how to get my toaster to run from Linux, because I think it'll impress my girlfriend. I mean, really, honestly, that's the way the comments would go. So it was like, I thought, well, if I do it in a show format, people know what's coming, right? I say from the very beginning, the videos are going to be between 20 and 40 minutes long. We're going to shoot for 30 minutes, right? And it did. A lot of those you talk too much comments went away, and that's pretty cool. But the other thing that went away was a lot of the views and a lot of the discoverability, which, people had told me, well, if you do that, that's what's going to happen. And I thought, well, I don't need them jerks anyway, But I've noticed that the views on videos on this channel since I started doing the quote-unquote Easy Linux Show, they pretty much go like this. I post a video, I get about 2,000 or 3,000 views, and then they drop off, which is telling me that the only people that are watching these are people who are subscribed to the channel, and not everybody who is subscribed to the channel is watching the videos. We have almost 52,000 subscribers on this channel now. That's amazing to me, but yet each one of these videos is getting 2,000 or 3,000 views in a week, and then after that they sort of peter out. Now, if you go back and look 2 or 3 weeks back, you'll see that, yeah, they do tend to go up, maybe get about 10,000 over time, but I'd like to have things be a little bit more discoverable myself here on YouTube, simply because of the fact that that's the whole point. I want people to learn about Linux, and I want people to use Linux, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute, hence the title of this video. You're probably wondering, well, what the hell? What has that got to do with the title of the video? See, there you go. That's kind of it's a double-edged sword. If you put something up there that's a nice, catchy little title, you get lots of clicks. But then you have to make sure that people get what they're paid for, I guess, with their click, or they get upset about it. So it's always very interesting, this whole new media thing. I come from old media. I worked in radio and television for so many years that it's hard to sometimes transpose what you know into this new medium. And the other reason I started doing the Easy Linux Show was that at that particular point in time, there were some folks here on YouTube who were doing similar things, and they were doing quite well, and I kind of like the idea of that. And now we're about 5-6 months down the road, and that's all gone to hell. So one of the YouTubers that I was working with and getting along with quite well, they've decided to put everything behind a paywall. And those of you who know who that is know who that is. And that sort of left a bad taste in my mouth. And by the way, that person will not talk to me now. I sent a couple of emails his direction, and it's like I don't exist. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Now, I was kind of straight up about my opinion, because I think that was a bad idea. And I think that that hurt his credibility. And that's the way that is. And then the other thing is that a lot of people now are using YouTube as a way to distribute audio-only podcasts by just putting visualizations up, which in itself is not a bad idea if you want to do podcasts. But I kind of like having that video outlet. I'm not big on the whole podcast sphere. I think that's rather limited. Nothing wrong with that. People who want to do it, that's fine. But it comes down to discoverability, and it comes down to people being able to see what you're doing. And so therefore I'm going to go back to the old way of doing it and just deal with the negative comments and move on. If you think I talk too much, well, I'm sorry. You can go watch Vine videos or whatever, because that's obviously where your mentality is at. I find that people who really want to learn about something will take the time to listen. Right now I'm into a YouTuber that has nothing to do with Linux. It's all about electronics, but it's this fella who's doing a video named Paul. He's doing a YouTube channel. His name is Paul Carlson, and it's Mr. Carlson's Lab. And if you like electronics and radio stuff like that, it's a great channel. And some of his videos are 2.5 hours long. And yes, that is long for a video, but this guy is an engineer's engineer. He really knows what he's talking about, and I have learned so much by watching his videos. And sometimes I do look up and go, yeah, I'd really like to watch this video, but it's a couple hours long. But it's like, he's very smart, and I've learned a great deal. So that's kind of the way it is. If you want to learn something, you got to listen to the teacher, right? Anyway, that's enough about that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is something I heard yesterday. I listened to other people who post on YouTube, and I pay attention to that kind of thing, and I read a lot of articles trying to keep up with things. And one of the things that I have heard again and again, probably over the last 6 months, more and more and more, are these people who say there are no new Linux users, that the only people that are using Linux are people who are developers, or they are computer nerds. They are people who, quote unquote, want to mess with computers. And this infuriates me. I mean, it doesn't irk me a little bit. It doesn't make me a little bit upset. I mean, it literally makes me want to pound my computer monitor into tiny little bits and pieces. And I'll tell you why. Because it's not true. It's totally not true. The Easy Linux project was founded on the idea that, by the way, I just switched the screen over to the Easy Linux webpage. It was founded on the idea that if you hold somebody's hand through the installation process and the initial learning curve of Linux, that they will be able to use Linux for everyday computing. And I have been proved right on that point again and again and again and again and again, but yet we have a very myopic elite group in the Linux community that have come to the conclusion that simply because they are not hearing from average users who are pounding on their door and telling them how wonderful Linux is, that they don't exist. Well, you know what? I do hear from those people. I have heard from those people at this point in the game in the tens of thousands. I mean, the tens of thousands of people. I can't even begin to tell you How many folks have simply sent me an email or a message and told me their little story about how, well, I don't really use my computer for much other than email and maybe some word processing, and I listen to music. So I gave Linux a try, and it's perfect because now I don't have to deal with any garbage from Microsoft and all that crap we talk about, or the walled garden that is the Mac system. I don't have to deal with any of that. Some people say, well, I've got this old Windows 7 computer and I was going to have to dump $900 into it. But now, guess what? I don't have to do that because it runs Linux perfectly. It's like in a couple of videos back, I talked about setting my brother's old Dell Dimension 3000 up on Ubuntu Mate, 32-bit version. He's good to go. As long as that machine keeps chugging, he can do whatever he needs to do. And this little myopic group of elitists that are always about the very latest bleeding edge, cutting edge hardware stuff, they don't understand that world. They have absolutely no clue. And that is the problem that I have. Some very intelligent people, engineering type people, sysadmin type people, they can be so smart and so stupid at the same time. They cannot envision somebody else's use case. They don't see how this works for them. If you come to the Easy Linux channel, or the Easy Linux webpage, you're on the Easy Linux channel now. But if you look at the Easy Linux webpage, www.easylinux.com, you'll see that we have this page here, testimonials. Now, I guess maybe about a year ago now, I just asked folks to send me their story. Send me their story. And I posted a whole bunch of them. And if you have some rainy Sunday afternoon with nothing better to do, you can read these actual testimonials from people all around the world. This goes on and on and on and on. And yes, a few of them are computer nerds. A few of them are developers. A few of them are sysadmin type people. Okay? But most of them are just average people who got sick of dealing with Microsoft's shit and said, I'm not going to do that anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to join this community of people who are using free and open source software, and I'm going to learn how to use it, and then I'll have control of my own system. So these folks out there, and like I said, if it was just from one source, then I would ignore it, but it's an idea that has taken root now, and I'm hearing it from people who are designing hardware for Linux users. They say that if you tried to market Linux to a general audience, that what would happen is that they wouldn't know what you were talking about and they'd be confused. That's not true. It all depends on how you market it. For instance, Dell, the people who sell Dell Linux computers, when Dell originally launched Ubuntu computers years ago, they just sort of threw it out there on the market. They didn't explain what it was, and it bombed. It totally bombed. So when they relaunched their Linux division, which, by the way, is doing quite well, they decided that they would focus on the development type person, the engineer type person, and that's who they would market to. And it's worked for them. However, that does not mean that somebody who is not one of these kind of people can't buy a Dell computer and run Linux and be very happy with it, or System 76, or Intraware, or Purism, or any of these companies that are selling these machines that are designed specifically for Linux. The problem is marketing. It's marketing, 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 marketing. We are not seeing commercials, and we have never seen commercials for Linux marketed to the consumer. 20 years ago, there were commercials that were running on television marketing Linux to the enterprise group from companies like Red Hat, IBM. But it has never, ever, ever, ever been marketed to the consumer. Ever. Not once. A lot of these same people who will sit there and tell you that there are no new average users coming to Linux are the same folks that, for whatever reason, whenever Linux Mint comes up in a conversation, they laugh about it. Well, they absolutely, positively don't get Linux Mint. They don't know what it's for. That's why I switched over to this page here. Linux Mint is not aimed at somebody who is a developer. It is not aimed at some computer nerd who wants the absolute latest bleeding edge packages. And it is for folks who want a stable workstation type environment and don't mind using a piece of software that may or may not be the absolute latest version. They just want it to work, right? And since these people tend to have fun mocking at Linux Mint for whatever reason, then they don't pay it attention, and they don't see the benefit in it. They don't seem to get it. It's not designed for them, and they don't want to deal with it. So on my webpage, that's why I have Linux Mint as one of the things across the top here, is because, I say here, question, what distribution of Linux should I start with? The answer is Linux Mint. I stand by that because it is a complete, polished experience right after you install it, and Linux Mint 19 looks like it's getting better. It looks like it's going to be even a better experience. That does not mean that Linux Mint is the only distribution of Linux that somebody can start out with. You can start out with whatever you want to. It depends on how much of a challenge you want to give yourself about learning Linux. Linux Mint works very well for folks who are just interested in getting to work. They just want to get in there and learn what they need to know to make things happen and keep things up to date, and then they can get on with their lives. They don't want to fool with it. Ubuntu Mate is a little bit more hands-on because of the way the welcome screen works and the way things get set up. So, for instance, for somebody like my brother, it's just the perfect Linux distribution because he can turn on what he needs, he can turn off what he doesn't need. My brother is actually more terminal-based than he is graphic-based. He likes to be able to do that kind of thing. So it works out well. Of course, he's old school Unix now. We're going back to Unix before there even was Linux. But anyway, I got off the subject a little bit there. Let me get back to where I was going. The point is that a lot of the content that comes out on YouTube about Linux is aimed at a crowd of users that sit around and worry about things that the average user, the people that I work with in the Easy Linux community, do not give two craps about. For instance, Docker. Okay, most of the people watching my videos don't even know what that is, and if they do know what it is, they don't care. The people who watch my videos don't care much about snap packages or Flatpaks or any of that garbage. They just want the computer to work. So that's why I don't do a whole lot of videos about this kind of stuff. People ask me to do videos about things all the time that are like that, and I look at them and I go, no, nobody's watching who's in this community really cares about those things. I don't want to waste your time with that. If you want to go learn how to use Docker, which is sandbox and containment and whatever the deal is, you go ahead and do that if that's something that's going to work for you. But most of the folks watching don't need that. The other thing that I'm hearing, and I heard this yesterday, and it prompted me to do this video, was this garbage about, well, we don't have to worry about Linux desktops anymore because now on a Chromebook you'll be able to run Linux apps. Who cares that you can... a Chromebook is not Linux. Okay, it might be based on Linux, but it is not Linux. Stop comparing a Chromebook to Linux, because it's not. Yes, it has a Linux kernel, but it is a very locked down, proprietary, walled garden type system that comes from Google. If anything would make, let me see, how can I phrase this? I think the biggest selling point for Linux is the fact that you can do exactly what you want with it, and you're not locked down to somebody else's idea of what you should be able to do with your computer. And so if you sit here and go, well, Chromebooks are cheap, and most people, they're just doing webmail and YouTube anyway, so it works. Why limit people like that? That kind of thinking drives me crazy. Or why say, well, nobody cares about Linux unless they're, writing software or developing? That's totally, completely not true. If you don't believe me, come to this webpage. And so all of this garbage about people putting themselves behind paywalls, that's left a bad taste in my mouth because, everything was going along just fine, and I felt like that, we're all riding the crest of this wave, and we're getting the word out, and it's really awesome. It's not that I agreed with everything that other people were saying, but at the same time, it was like, okay, we're all kind of heading the same direction, And now, like I said, it all kind of fell apart. And it disheartened me a little bit. And then this other thing I'm hearing about, there are no new Linux users. That's just, wow, you're missing the point. Woohoo! You know, we don't have a lot of solid numbers in Linux about who's using it and how many people are coming to it. So it's all kind of a gut feeling sort of deal. But as I stated earlier, I have talked to people in the tens of thousands who have discovered Linux all over the world. Some of those people have turned into computer nerds because of Linux. My mother is a really good example of that, because when she started out, the only thing, she was afraid of the computer, and she wouldn't do anything with it besides, play with a web browser and maybe look at email and write a little document every now and again. Now she's all into genealogy, and she's got all these different memberships, and she's running servers, and she's calling me up and asking me questions about these weird database files that I don't understand. I'm like, Mom, I don't know what that is. And I asked her one time, I said, well, why are you doing this now? You've had a computer for years and years and years. Why are you doing this? And she said, because I was afraid of Windows. Because I was afraid that if I clicked on something, I might break something or get a virus. I'm not afraid of Linux Mint. And that my mother is about the farthest cry that you can get from being a computer nerd, a developer, a code junkie, and she's doing quite well with it. And that story is echoed again and again and again and again. So I just find that a little disheartening. It's all about marketing, gang. I really wish that it could be a situation where we could start some sort of fund where we would simply buy advertising for Linux. Not any particular distribution, but just maybe pick the top 3 distributions and put it in a 30-second ad and come up with enough money to get it in mainstream media. I'm talking about on television and radio and all over the place, not just on the internet, but get it out in front of people so they know what this is. And I think that if you could somehow do that, if you could create that kind of buzz, that with the way things are in the general zeitgeist, I guess that's the right word right now when you're talking about how people are looking at computers and privacy and things like that, Linux is a great solution. And I have always said that the more people that use Linux, the better. It's going to make for better software. It'll make for better hardware support. It will make everything even more awesome than it already is. And one final note on this before I, quit doing the video here, since I've rambled on quite a bit about this. Linux is better than it's ever been. Ubuntu 18.04, awesome. The latest Manjaro, awesome. Not my cup of tea, but awesome. Linux Mint 19 in beta. I've run it for 3 days. Awesome. It's so much better than it's been. Ubuntu Mate, my favorite spin of Ubuntu, other than vanilla Ubuntu. Awesome. KDE Desktop, Plasma Desktop, awesome. Better than it's ever been. Not, once again, not my cup of tea, but you Plasma users out there, you're digging it, and I can see why. It's gotten so much better now. You just install it and open up a graphics software center. You got to remember that these sort of software applications that they have now, we didn't have those 10 years ago. We were using Synaptic Package Manager or putting things in at a command line. So much easier now. But yet, we have this little elitist bunch that is pumping out all of this negativity, and I don't think it helps Linux. Really don't. So, now that I have that off my chest, and we can look forward to happier things, the way I plan to do videos from this point forward is just to wing it. I'm going to just post a video when I feel like it. So it might be 2 weeks between a video getting posted, or it might be 2 days. Who knows? I kind of want to bust out of this format kind of thing, and I'm not worried about production value. I'm not, I can't use OBS, gang. I know a lot of people out there talk about, OBS is great. That's too complex for me. I like simple screen recorder. by Martin Barrett. Yeah, that's the developer's name. Simple Screen Recorder. Thank you so much for this wonderful little application that has allowed me to do YouTube videos, Martin. Honestly, it's just made this so simple and so easy, and I don't have to think about anything, and I don't have to edit nothing, and I don't have to do anything with it. I just do the video. So that's kind of the way we're going to keep rolling here. And probably one of the biggest videos, I'm going to do a whole video about installing Linux Mint 19 from the ground up, like I did for Linux Mint 18. That was the most popular video that I have on my channel is Beginner's Guide to Installing Linux Mint 18. And that video has served me well over the last 3 years. So I'm going to do one for 19. When 19 gets out of beta and it gets stable, that's probably one of the next things that you'll see here on the channel. And we'll just keep cruising on. So what did you think of this video? Do you think I'm a complete idiot? Do you think I just blather on and have nothing useful to say? Do you care one way or the other? What do you think about not doing the Easy Linux show and just going back to the old way of doing things? Is that something that makes you happy, or is that something that you don't like? See, this is called feedback, and it is always welcomed. And my comment section on my YouTube channel is open. It's not closed like other people's are. I know that was a dig. I shouldn't be that way. Some people have very good reasons for doing the things that they do. Even if I disagree with them, I should be nice, right? But be that as it may, you can use the comments section. I know how to use the delete key if somebody posts something nasty. Doesn't bother me that much. Anyway, you can also check out Easy Linux on Facebook. And thank you to everybody who has, even though some people think Facebook is evil. Well, if you haven't quite completely divorced yourself from the evil of Facebook, you may follow us at our group. Also, you can check out easylinux.com, which was featured in this video. It's just a little bitty old web page. You can check that thing out. And also check out freedompenguin.com for lots of cool stories and crap about Linux. It's from a lot of people. Matt Hartley's been kind enough to syndicate every single one of the Easy Linux shows. Whether he will want to continue to syndicate my videos, I don't know. I'll keep sending them in and we'll see what happens. And we'll see where it goes from there. That's it, gang. I'm done talking. I have yammered on. I feel better now. Thank you for letting me vent. We'll talk again soon.